Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Tucker Hazel, and we're here today to talk about Nintendo's 2021 because we just got, believe it or not, a Nintendo Direct. And so we've got some new release dates, some new games to talk about and things of that nature. But first, we've been talking in our Discord all day, all last night about the Nintendo Direct. If you want to join us in the chat, be sure to join the Discord link as usual, right in the top of the description. If you're down there hunting around, give us a sub too. We'd really appreciate it. We really would.
That was the best intro you've done. You know what? I just gotta give you props where it's due. That was the best intro you've done. Congratulations.
Well, good. I'll never recapture it. You know what else is never gonna get recaptured, Tucker?
Yeah.
The excellence of Nintendo's 2017 lineup of games.
Clearly, that's getting more and more clear as we pass farther away from it.
Now, Tucker, I feel like this is an interesting discussion because I think we're coming into it from two divergent perspectives.
Okay.
Because personally, I'm very excited for Nintendo's lineup of games that are announced so far for 2021. Of course, off the top, yes, because we're not going to discuss it, I'm repping the victory drip today because I got Splatoon 3. Literally the one Nintendo game I've been the most excited for. It's here, but it's not coming until 2022. So I'll just say it looks phenomenal. Can't fucking wait. But that's going to be a discussion for another time. Right now we're talking about only 2021 confirmed titles, and we can speculate a little bit at the end about things like Diamond and Pearl remakes, which might actually get announced in about a week. We'll find out. But Tucker, we know what we've got coming. I want to do a quick recap for you, for the audience.
I've got it written down actually with the dates if you'd like me to go through it.
Then go for it.
All right, of course. Just came out Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser Fury, February 12th.
Absolutely.
Counting Bravely Default 2, February 26th.
Yes.
Monster Hunter Rise, March 26th,
yes,
exactly 1 month apart. New Pokemon Snap, April 30th, almost exactly 1 month apart. Mario Golf Super Rush, June 25th, almost exactly 2 months apart. Oh, did I miss one?
We're missing some May things.
Oh, sorry. Famicom Detective Club, Missing Air, and The Girl Who Stands Behind, May 14th.
Yes. And Miitopia, I believe, is May
yes,
20-something? 21st. Okay.
Yes, I had those as second tier releases, so they're
That's incorrect.
Well, you know I'm right, so. You fucked up my flow. Mario Golf Super Rush, June 25th.
Yes.
No More Heroes 3, August 27th. Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, July 16th.
Now you fucked up your own. Here, let's.
I fucked up my order because it's separated into tiers.
But that doesn't make sense.
It does.
It doesn't make sense. Leave a comment, but actually don't leave a comment because I won't read it. Go to the Discord and tell us, does it make sense to list games out of calendar order? The answer, of course, is no. But Tucker, I'd like to thank you for that recap because you had dates. I didn't. I was just going to go like, here are the fucking games coming and things of that nature. Yeah. So you're more prepared than I was. How do you feel about this run of games?
I might pick up 2 of them.
Which ones? I'm curious.
And these are both pretty solid maybes, being Mario Golf and Skyward Sword.
Okay. I am going to pick up all of them.
Every single one? Bravely Default 2?
Bravely Default 2 is the only one I'm on the fence about, but everything else I'm pretty solidly excited for.
Very interesting.
And the reason being, the first half of this year extending into the summer, to me, speaks to my weird fucking interest as a Nintendo fan.
Sure.
To lend credence to that, in the past week over at CBR where I've written, I've talked about topics that interest really only me. So shout out to my editors for letting me write about the Satellaview, the Switch Brain Age game that didn't come out in America, fucking Dashin the Giant, Captain Rainbow, well, and now Famicom Detective Club. I love Nintendo's weirder and more niche series and games.
Sure.
Now, I'm never going to sit here on this video feed and defend the mainstream appeal, the importance, the legitimacy of this 2021 lineup. But for me, it has a lot of games I'm very, very interested in because I have a very particular set of tastes that makes games like Miitopia and especially Famicom Detective Club very interesting to me. I really like Mario Tennis Aces for as fun as it was, so I'm super excited for Mario Golf.
Sure.
I really can't wait to get into Monster Hunter Rise. I already have some friends here on campus who we've been talking about. We're going to be playing it together. You know, a lot of these games, for my interest, are very exciting. Your response?
Yes, Tucker Hazel from Backlog Banter. So I just have to say that I appreciate you putting it out there that you recognize that this is niche taste.
Absolutely.
I do always find it fascinating, peculiar from my point of view. Is I'm relatively particular about the games that I purchase, about the games that I play. I like finding ways to experience things that don't require me spending the full price at launch, especially. Is that this is widely recognized is you buy things that Nintendo puts out. It kind of doesn't, the quality doesn't really factor into things. And I find it fascinating that even things like Famicom Detective Club, which is an interesting release from multiple reasons, but not a genre or series that you're interested in the slightest, but because it is this old port or remastered thing, Japan exclusive, it's this whole set of deals. It actually does factor into something sort of interesting, but niche regardless. And this year is underwhelming for a lot of reasons, because so many of these things, if they weren't featured in Nintendo Direct, would go completely unnoticed. And I think that's an interesting point to think about.
Well, I think it depends on the game. So actually, Famicom Detective Club for me is exciting because it feels antithetical to a lot of the stuff Nintendo has been doing in terms of porting over a bunch of Wii U games, in terms of taking the more safe way out with a lot of business decisions. Famicom Detective Club, for people who aren't aware, the games coming out on Switch are full remakes of Famicom Disk System exclusive visual novels from 1988 and 89 respectively. Obviously, I've never played them. I did a little bit of research because I read about them for CBR, and in learning about them, it has such a fascinating history for people who care a lot about Nintendo's legacy. For instance, Gunpei Yokoi, who is responsible for the Game Boy and a lot of Nintendo's hardware, produced those games. Yoshio Sakamoto, father to Metroid, Rhythm Heaven, all of these series, is the one that wrote them. They're supposed to be very interesting and niche games, so for me, that's super, super cool, you know?
Sure.
So I think what I find nice about the current lineup for 2021 is that it has this weird and niche stuff for fucking people like me, right? But I do also think that there are some more mainstream games here that are really important. For instance, Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury is already opening very, very big in Japan. That game is going to be huge, especially for the 65 million Switch owners who didn't have a Wii U like you and I, right? That game is a huge deal. Monster Hunter Rise, I think, is going to be gigantic. Monster Hunter World was Capcom's, and still is Capcom's, best-selling title in its entire history.
Sure.
So having Rise on Switch, such a hot ecosystem, I think is going to be very big. I think the reasons this lineup looks strange is because it's August, nothing.
Cut off, yeah.
Right. And I think that's going to be fleshed out probably with a Pokemon announcement during Pokemon Week next week. And then hopefully, if Directs are getting back onto a more regular cadence, something in July that hammers out a couple more games for a couple more slots. But I actually think Nintendo's 2021 looks pretty good because it's appealing to a lot of different demographics. It's got the more hardcore appeal in games like Monster Hunter Rise, the more mainstream hardcore appeal. It's got games for people who are new to the ecosystem with things like 3D World and Bowser's Fury, which is a very big release, right? And then you've got things like Mario Golf, which is going to be a fun, more casual appeal game right there, and then the weird niche stuff from me. And you can't discount Skyward Sword HD, which is a game that Skyward Sword only sold about 3.5 million copies.
Sure.
So there are a lot of people
That's got to be one of the lowest selling Zeldas.
Yes, I believe it's, I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but it is, yes. Yeah. Especially off of the Wii's install base. That was abysmal.
Of course.
That spoke a lot towards the Wii falling off of a cliff in like 2010.
Sure.
But I just think that for a lot of different groups, 2021 has a lot of compelling software.
Honestly, I don't have a ton to say about a lot of those games that we're talking about here. I think a lot of this just personally doesn't appeal to me, which is why I said, it's a maybe for 2 of the games.
Sure.
But my main complaint about the year, especially when comparing it to the last few years of the Switch, some of them have been slower years, essentially everything except for 2017, although I think 2019 was pretty strong.
I agree.
But especially 2018 and 2020 and all the years have had a solid, if you look back on the year and you're like, okay, these games came out, and this is why the Switch library is building so well.
Yes.
And then when I look at 2021, we obviously don't have a complete picture of the year, but we're leaning on 2.33, as I said last night, new games from Nintendo.
Yes.
The 2 being very niche ones, and the 0.33 being Bowser's Fury.
Yeah.
The 2 I'm talking about being Mario Golf Super Rush and new Pokemon Snap. And of course, we've got other Pokemon stuff coming out, but if we're just talking about through August 27th. And then Nintendo is leaning more so this year than I think any past year of the Switch on its third-party partners to publish exclusive content, with No More Heroes 3, Bravely Default 2, Monster Hunter Rise. And then outside of that is ports. One of which, Skyward Sword, is, the more we look into it, slightly bungled of a way to start the Zelda 35th. No, wait, how many years? 30.
35.
Yes, 35th anniversary. Yeah, it's 1 year after Mario. Yeah. So when I just look at this as a whole, it's just a strange presentation for a lot of these things. Yeah. I think they could be stronger if it was in comparison to something to pin the year around. But when the big new Nintendo release of the year is Mario Golf Super Rush, it just tends to feel a little bit weird in comparison to 2017 Mario, Zelda, Splatoon, Mario Kart, and then 2018 Super Smash Brothers and Let's Go, 2019 Sword and Shield, Fire Emblem, Luigi Mansion, Mario Maker, and then 2020 being, well, just Animal Crossing, but being Animal Crossing. And, you know, especially because they presented the start of the 35th anniversary for Zelda with, sorry, the game you want, it's going good, but we can't show you anything. I think that really sets the tone for me in a not particularly exciting way. And I got to blame most of that on the Direct and its pacing and the issues that I have with it personally. But outside of that, I really just don't have a lot to rally behind on the Switch in 2021.
And I think you're right in a lot of respects. A big one is the most exciting, the most high-profile games in this lineup are older titles. It's 3D World and Skyward Sword. Those are obviously the biggest games here, right? And I think it speaks to the fact that I've always felt that the Switch has had a deficit of truly original content.
Sure.
And we're really feeling it in this first leg of the year. Absolutely. And I want to get into some of these ports, which we're going to get into specific games in a minute.
Yes.
But you're totally right about us lacking that major title to grab onto. I'm slightly hopeful if we're going off of the 2018 template, because if you remember, we didn't learn about Smash until March, and we didn't learn about Let's Go until May. And I'm pretty sure, and everyone's pretty sure, that we're getting Diamond Pearl Remix next week, or at least something from Pokemon. So if we drop that in holiday and we assume that Nintendo will announce one more major game for the year,
for holiday,
there's time for that, and then there's time for, I really think, Super Mario Party 2, and maybe a Kirby game or something. You know, there's time for smaller things in there too. Metroid,
smaller games.
I know.
No, but obviously I have nothing against Metroid. And here's the thing: is an announcement of a new 2D Metroid, that would be not the Zelda or Mario or Smash tier linchpin for the year, but a big enough new first-party announcement to feel like, okay, 2021 has something to rally around.
Yeah, and I hope we're gonna get that, but of course we can't just speak in hopes, because Nintendo is classic for not fulfilling them. But I think there's a route forward. In the meantime, though, I think we should probably bore in a little bit to some of these games. And just moving sequentially, I think the first one I have any interest in talking about, because I already talked about Famicom Detective Club, would be Miitomo, and only briefly, because I think it's interesting. Yes, Miitopia. I'll never get that title right until I actually play it. I've wanted to play Miitopia for a long time because I love Tomodachi Life, but this game came out post Switch, so I didn't really feel inclined to go back to 3DS right then. And it just passed me by. So I'm excited it's coming. $50 is outrageous for this game.
It was 40 when it launched, I believe.
Yeah, it's 40 when it launched. Yes, it was, which is ridiculous. But it coming out on Switch is exciting in a vacuum. At the same time, I'm curious what this means for more 3DS games coming to Switch moving forward.
Have we gotten any any 3DS ports?
We've gotten 3DS ports of Switch releases, but not
Yes.
Switch releases of 3DS ports. Because we got
technically Hyrule Warriors content from Hyrule Warriors Legends was in Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, so
yes. But it's mostly gone Fire Emblem Warriors and what Captain Toad are the two big examples.
Which is a part of a Wii U game.
It all gets complicated, but the point is, I think this might open the door for more 3DS games to come over,
which would be very interesting.
It would be very interesting, and I think that's a discussion to have for another time. But I think there's a lot of merit to bringing over a lot of the post-Switch 3DS games that everybody forgot about, even me. So I think that'd be cool. But I just wanted to give a brief nod to my excitement there.
Well, I actually do have something to say about that. Is I think that game is interesting to me for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I am interested in a lot of those later 3DS era titles, which I can't say I've played any of them. Yeah. I mean, as soon as the Switch launched, I don't think I picked up anything for the 3DS. Well, I guess Ultra Sun, but Miitopia. Yes, you almost got me. I almost was sucked into your little grammar vortex there. Is interesting for me for a couple of reasons, because it was such an obscure release that didn't have a lot of marketing behind it. That it's interesting to see them really present this as a new game. They didn't mention that it was, hey, remember that game on the 3DS that it's coming to the Switch? It was, no, Miitopia is releasing on Nintendo Switch. Here you go. And as someone who hasn't played it, I don't know how much you can test, but I can't tell what's new. Horses, maybe. But it's an interesting presentation of this game. That is it a download only title? Is there a physical release? Do we know how much they're going to push this game? And on top of that, it's such a strange title in the first place. Of course, you have Tomodachi Life, which is sort of in the same vein, but that really has its own draw to playing with Mii's and being this unique experience. It's a 2D turn-based RPG, but with Mii's, and not much more as far as I know. It's just such a strange title to be released from so many different angles. And if it releases and it's good, I will eat my fucking lunch and maybe play it. But it's one that I'm intrigued by, certainly. But I think there's certain reasons to think that it's not necessarily anything to get excited about.
Yeah, like we were talking earlier, it speaks to my very niche interests, but it also speaks to a weird thing that we also see in the next game that I think is worth talking about, Mario Golf Super Rush, is this resurgence of the Mii brand, which I think is going a little bit under the radar, but
you're right. Yeah,
the Mii's have been almost entirely forgotten about in this generation. They've been relegated to the very bare bones Mii Maker on Switch. It's buried under a bunch of menus. They're nowhere near as important as they were on Wii U, 3DS. But Miitopia coming out on Switch, and now you're playing as your Mii in the story mode for Mario Golf Super Rush makes me curious if there's some bigger resurgence there. I think that could be interesting. I'm curious. Honestly, no, Nintendo might be a complete fucking fluke, but I think that's such a strong and recognizable brand, especially as these Switch gains more and more mainstream attention, that I no longer think that association is harmful. I can see wanting to distance yourself from all of the Wii stuff, not knowing how the Switch is going to do, but I think kind of bringing that back in now would be smart.
Yeah, so I actually think that the Mii's are an interesting part in Nintendo history. It's a very iconic thing that with the Mii Channel theme and all of that, everyone knows that music. Everyone made a bunch of Mii's. Everyone screwed around with that on their Wii's back in the day. And it's an interesting thing to carry through. In my eyes, what the Mii's need is sort of a rework. It needs clearly more detail that you can put into your characters. I think it'd be more interesting if you could do more customization, though they sort of rabbit hole themselves in to releasing these games with the old Mii style. Now they can't really give it that update that I think it would work a lot better to be brought back in a larger way on the Switch if it was given some sort of refresh. But the Mii's are in Smash, the Mii's are in Mario Golf, the Mii's are in Miitopia, so they've kind of cut themselves off for that. But when you look at things like the way that they were presented in Miitopia with like hair color gradients and more interesting like facial features and things, thinking, okay, there is more potential in this. And it's very interesting that they're representing it to us like this after it being completely gone. Miiverse is gone. The Miis are incredibly backgrounded in Smash Ultimate, although they still exist. But yeah, no, I think that is something that you're right. It is kind of making a resurgence, but in all honesty, I could see maybe one more game with Mii's coming out, and that kind of being it.
Probably. Tomodachi Life 2. Fingers fucking crossed.
That would be interesting. Yeah,
that's one of if not my favorite 3DS game.
Sure.
So that'd be super exciting. But Tucker, I want to. Is this where your pulse is? I always forget.
Yeah, it's somewhere.
Here. I was talking
one here and one here. There's blood all everywhere in your body.
Basically, I want to know how you feel about Mario Golf.
Mario Golf Super Rush. First off, top level impressions, opposite of base. Yes. Terrible name, super generic sounding name.
Yes.
I mean, and I think that unfortunately applies to a lot of the presentation of this game. Is yes, awesome story mode, that's great. I really want to see how large scale that is. The speed golf, great concept actually. I rewatched the direct and like caught that. I'm like, okay, that sounds really fun. Yeah. But outside of that, it's a golf game. It's a PGA game where you can play as Mario, and it's very interesting to see them present this as the return of the Mario Golf series, because that has been gone for I think 13 years at this point. I think I heard that number last night.
Well, then no, that's not true.
What? Because it was in the fucking collection on 3DS?
No, Island Tour came out in 2013 on 3DS.
Oh,
but it's
maybe that's where I got it from. 2013. And it also,
yeah, that's definitely what it was. The last one on a home console though was Toadstool Tour in, I don't know, 2002 or 3, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so regardless, yeah, it's interesting to see this make a return in the first place. It's a game that I think people have been really asking for.
Yes.
Even though it is one of the sort of B tier, C tier series. But the fact that they aren't presenting it as something more creative and unique, and being like, okay, look at, like, there's statistics, there's clean UI, there's realistic golf courses. It seems like a missed opportunity, in my opinion, to really sell the series as something more unique and a Nintendo franchise.
So the reason I'm personally really excited for Mario Golf is because that's the one Mario Sports series I've never gotten into. I've literally
played.
I've played the demo for Island Tour and 3DS. That's all I ever played. So for me, it's going to be fun getting into the series, and then probably want to just go buy Toadstool Tour and play that on my GameCube, because that's widely regarded as the best one. And what it always appealed to me about the Mario Golf games was the Mario element of it, which is very clearly being put in the background.
Yeah.
I think that the name and let me put it this way.
Okay.
The first half of this trailer, between the name and the generic looking courses, felt very Ultra Smash.
Sure.
The second half of that trailer felt very Mario Tennis Aces.
You're right. You're 100% right. The story mode, the unique power-ups, all of that, yeah.
Now, that makes me skeptical, because Mario Tennis Aces is a game that I love a lot because it has great local multiplayer. My sister and I played a ton of it. But when you take a step back, that game is really flawed in a lot of ways. A key way is that its single player was advertised as this bigger, more grand thing with RPG elements, and it absolutely wasn't.
Sure.
It seems like in this trailer they addressed that a little bit more by like actually showing people upgrading stats. Be like, hey fuckers, we lied in Aces, but it's actually here this time, you know? But I see this game falling into a lot of the problems that Aces had. But at the same time, I see it lifting up the strength of Aces, which was its interesting core gameplay that was more than just tennis. It was like tennis plus a fighting game. And this is almost like golf plus a racing game, kind of.
Sure, yeah.
I don't really know. Golf. Yeah, right. So I think that at minimum, it's going to be a fun local multiplayer Mario Golf game that is going to have interesting ideas. But my hope is that it's going to be more than that. And I'm just concerned that it's not going to be.
Yeah.
And we're going to find out. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, this game is interesting for me as someone I've never played a Mario Golf game.
Yeah.
Honestly, didn't have a lot of interest in it until I started hearing people saying like, oh, we really want Mario Golf. I'm like, okay, well, why is that? I don't really hadn't heard a lot of people talk about it until now. Like it's sort of, because it's been gone, it's had a resurgence in interest.
Yeah.
I think the trailer was interesting. It was interesting for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
It was very weirdly paced, with, as you said, the first half being the more generic part, and then them getting into a little more interesting stuff as it went on. But not only that, they did something that I've really never seen, is they did the announcement and the breakdown back to back. They did it as part of one presentation, instead of with Aces where you got a sizzle reel trailer. Okay, this is all the stuff that's interesting about it, and then a direct 3 months later, whatever, you get a breakdown of it. Okay, this is the interesting mode. This is how you play, that sort of stuff. And that is cool for a couple reasons, because it showed us speed golf. It got us a little bit more acquainted with what's different about this game, but it does make me question, are we going to get another breakdown with more interesting stuff? Is there another game mode we're not quite used to yet, or introduced to yet? Are there more unique courses we haven't seen yet? How deep is this story mode? It would be interesting to get a second breakdown, but because we already got a breakdown, I'm just curious if that's going to happen.
I think we are. So I rewatched our reaction. Just, I don't know.
In the corner.
Sure.
Maybe.
Probably not if I'm editing this video. But I think you're kind of overstating how deeply they went into the gameplay. I think the weird thing was they reiterated information, which I think, rewatching it, there's not as much information there as I thought there was. Okay. I totally think that there is the need for a longer 8 to 10 minute trailer that actually goes into the game systems and everything. And I'm sure we'll get that, because I'm sure it'll track alongside what Aces did and have a little presentation and have an open demo where you can try it.
That would be great.
So
it would work perfectly for this game.
But I think that's about all I have to say about Mario Golf. I think the last major title to talk about is Skyward Sword HD.
It totally is.
And
although, actually, a couple things. I do want to. We're going out a little bit of order here, but I'd like to end with Skyward Sword, because I think we got the most to say about that. Is No More Heroes 3 is a very interesting one to me, because it's been an enigma of an announcement of the No More Heroes series coming back, of Suda51 saying Travis will come back on the 2017 January presentation floor. Us getting Travis Strikes Back, us getting the ports of 1 and 2, the weird trailers of this game, which didn't have gameplay, and I think actually yesterday was our first time seeing gameplay. Am I wrong about that? But
we'd seen like clips, very little clips.
But this was certainly a little more meaningful. But the game doesn't look good. It's not visually impressive. It looks compressed, and I'm not sure if that's the file that they sent in, but for this game that has been consistently hyped up in these really high quality animated trailers and things like that, to have visuals that could honestly look like they could be on a Wii kind of jarred me a little bit, because I really expected this to be a beautiful, flashy game that really pulled people in, but I was certainly knocked down by that.
So when you look at the game in screenshots, it looks a lot better, because I had the same feeling watching the direct, but it still doesn't look great. It's an impressive, I think it's a visually impressive game that has been stuck under a really weird filter.
Okay.
Like the overexposed cell shaded stuff. I think that's
didn't work for the first game. Let me tell you, that game not very appealing on my eyeballs.
Yeah, but I think it's more something Suda's done to the game in terms of trying to make it look more stylized, which is taking away from actually some very good environmental detail and texturing, field, and screenshots.
Okay.
But I think it's important to remember that I always forget Suda is basically an indie dev. And the positioning of this game is very interesting, and I'll be curious to see how expectations are met or not met. I always wanted to be a No More Heroes fan, and I finally got to play them with the Switch ports, and I was underwhelmed. But I'm willing to give this game a try. But this is really one I'm gonna have to play to know. It looks weird and creative, which is always a plus in my book.
Sure.
So we'll see. But I think it's time for Skyward Sword HD.
I don't know. Okay, I'll just start you off, because I think I've actually been thinking about more about this, because I had some interactions on Twitter last night. I don't know if you saw those, but
I didn't.
I saw someone tweet, one of the people who puts out official Nintendo information, like sort of retweets box art posts. I saw the box art post for Skyward Sword HD, which is the Wii box art.
Yeah.
With the word HD on it. Yeah. And I retweeted it and I'm like, this is the laziest possible way this box art could have been handled. And I got 3 separate comments saying, well, how else would they have handled it? And I'm like, crack my knuckles, download the Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD, Ocarina of Time HD, Majora's Mask HD, all those 8 box arts. Be like, make different box art. They literally did it for every single other HD Zelda re-release. And on top of that, all of those games had larger changes that made them, well, not huge amounts, but made them the definitive version of that experience. And I think this one will be, because it has the button controls and it's stuck on the Wii, and obviously does look better. But this does seem like the laziest Zelda port that we've gotten, in a very strange way for them to start off the Zelda 35th anniversary.
So I agree in the broad strokes. Mm-hmm. I think that this is better than Twilight Princess HD.
Okay, actually, I don't know a lot about that one, to be honest.
I mean, Twilight Princess HD is weird because you can just throw the Wii disc of Twilight Princess into your Wii U and play that. And the game was up, it was cleaned up, but kind of, and it had some changes, but not really. It was more quality of life and some small gameplay changes. Probably the coolest thing about it is it's like, what is it? It's the map of the Wii version with the controls of the GameCube version, or one of the two. It's a fusion of the two, but basically the overarching point is that that's a cleaned up, better version of Twilight Princess, but it's not night and day. It's not, of course, Ocarina 3D. It's not Majora 3D. It's not even Wind Waker HD. Mm-hmm. And Skyward Sword HD feels like a very small step. I'm thinking that that's because this was a weird way to announce it.
Yeah,
it was a very strange presentation, and I'm assuming that there's going to be more gameplay changes here. I don't think they're going to be. I don't think they're going to be major. I mean, they're going to be like, you don't have to fight the imprisoned 18 bajillion times, which apparently people really hate. The reason, put it out there, the reason I'm excited for this game is I've never finished Skyward Sword. I never even came close.
I never played it. So
yeah,
I'm even more fresh on this.
I got it at release, and I was 11. So I couldn't fucking figure out how to beat it. And I got bored and I got stuck and stopped playing.
Yeah.
So, and I never actually went back to it. It's one of the few Zelda games I've not gone back to. So I'll be playing it, not completely fresh, but pretty fresh.
Yeah.
But the button control, people got to stop talking about the button controls like it's like Nintendo's doing something cool here. The button controls were a legitimate necessity to making the game work on Switch. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I'm so frustrated about this being the main selling point is... Yeah, they're button controls because you can't release the game on Switch without button controls.
Yeah.
So I'm excited by merit of necessity and utility to get to play the game without motion controls. I'm going to try it both ways.
Yeah, so am I. If I buy it, which I am. I don't need. I stop fiddling around. I rebought 3D World.
Yeah.
For Bowser's Fury. I've never played Skyward Sword. Honestly, though, the one saving grace for this is that the Wii version still costs about $60, so this is gonna be just the best way to play it, and not particularly disparaged price wise.
Yes, for sure. So this is a very utilitarian remake. Mm-hmm. The game, it's $20 in the Wii U shop, which I've told you before. You said no, I want a physical copy, so here you fucking go. Here's your physical copy. But
I didn't know that.
But it's like Skyward Sword is a game that more than most other games needed to be represented. You know, bring it back on Switch by merit of necessity. Have different controls and clean it up a little bit. I wish it had gotten a bigger graphical upgrade. I wish there was more work done here, and maybe there is. Maybe we'll see it again in a couple months in the Zelda 35th Direct, which is going to happen. Mark my fucking words. Where they show it a little bit more. And as of this morning, VGC is reporting that Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD are coming to Switch this year, which is not surprising. And VGC scoops everything correctly now. They're the new Kotaku in terms of scoops. They did for most pertinent to the Nintendo audience. They were the first to report 3D All-Stars. So I basically take what they're saying here as fact, although fucking homeless person could probably predict that these games are going to come to Switch, right? But I think there's a chance that we could get more info that's going to flesh out the game
Yeah.
But it's pretty underwhelming.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see what information they're holding back, because that's what you should start with. If it's the stuff that's going to sell people on rebuying a re-release of the game that otherwise doesn't look very whelming, they should have started with the possibly larger changes.
Yes, I agree, and I also think that this announcement was just tempered by the fact that no Breath of the Wild 2 news.
Yeah.
So here's
the most hyped Zelda game. Sorry, not giving information that. Here's the most controversial Zelda game instead.
Yeah, and when that juxtaposition was really frustrating, and I really thought for a second it was going to be a new Zelda game, or like a 2D Zelda game from Grezzo, or it was going to be a substantive collection, because 3D All-Stars had more value than this.
Very true.
And Galaxy got new controls because it had to have new controls. Skyward Sword got new controls because it had to have new controls. It could have thrown at least Ocarina and Wind Waker in here too, you know?
Yeah.
So it was just disappointing, I think. But it's a Zelda game I really haven't played a lot of, so it's exciting in that lens. But you gotta view these things through many lenses. I've got two right here. Prop humor.
Spectacles.
But Tucker, I think that's everything major to talk about, unless there's any other games you want to circle back to. I will say new Pokemon Snap looks great, but we've talked about that in other junctures. So it's a run of games.
So just recapping this list for myself, in my mind, I begrudgingly bought 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. I no longer regret that purchase. I've since basically 100%ed everything on that cartridge, and I do think that it was worth my time, and I'm glad I did that. Unfortunately, and I don't know how this just speaks to my personal taste as a Nintendo fan, but I think that even the larger stuff this year is middling for me, and I think that's why I look at this year with a little bit of distaste. And I'm optimistic that there are things that they're holding back. I think that a new Mario Party, a new Kirby, a new some other sort of ports that I might be more interested in, and of course the hopeful Pokemon, and one big last thing for the holiday to stand around could pull this year out of the gutter for me. But at this moment, it seems like an interesting way to start the year without a lot to pull it forward. Because even with something like 2018, Smash was announced. Well, like, it was later, but it was pretty early on, so we knew, okay, we have this to look forward to. But yeah, I think that basically sums up my opinions on this.
Yeah, and like I said, for my niche Nintendo tastes, I'm getting a lot of what I want in that, and I do think there's time for a couple more things. I think Splatoon 3 would have been perfect as the October game.
Yeah.
And it seems far along, which is why I'm confused why it's not releasing until 2022. But we'll see.
Yeah, so actually, last thing about those 22 games, if we're just going to talk a little bit about the future, is Breath of the Wild 2, Breath of the Wild sequel, and Splatoon 3 are both games that are heavily based off of games that are already existing on the Switch. And it's interesting to see them be so far along in development, but have such little information. Of course, Splatoon 3 just announced, but coming out in a while. Because of that, and looking back at release dates for other games, Splatoon 2 came out in almost half the time that it's taking Splatoon 3 to come out. And of course, Splatoon 2 had longer post-launch content. It had the Octo expansion, so I think that's probably why they spaced them out a little bit more. But even with Breath of the Wild 2, this is almost reaching a normal Zelda game development cycle release time. It'll be 5 years since the release of Breath of the Wild, which is approximately 5-6 years is the release between other Zelda games. And it's an asset reusing sequel, and we haven't even seen gameplay for it. I've gotten a second trailer. It's just interesting that they're holding things back, because I think that those two especially could be things to really pull the Switch forward excitement-wise.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we don't know when. The only one we have a release date for is Splatoon 3, but we also have Bayonetta and Metroid Prime 4 and Breath of the Wild 2, which are all huge games and floating out there. The one thing I will say about Splatoon 3 really quick is it's taken them longer, but I think it's for the better.
I agree.
Splatoon 2's one of its main flaws is that was rectified with post-launch content, actual expansion, all that excellent stuff, was that it felt way too much like Splatoon 1. It was very clear that that game was a functional necessity to have a big online focused game to propel the Switch in that first year, and then it really came into its own. I think that Splatoon 3 this fall makes more sense, but if we need that much time for me to boot up Splatoon 3 after having almost 300 hours between the first and second game, and feeling okay, this is fresh, this is new, this is actually the next step for Splatoon. Fresh. I'll take it. I will take it. Breath of the Wild 2, I'd like to have a larger discussion with you about Breath of the Wild 2.
Sure.
But we'll see it. Nintendo is possibly setting up a really exciting 2022.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing is we've been saying that for the last 3 years is okay, next year. They're saving everything. They're working on it. It's gonna be a banger year. And unfortunately, God, I hope 2022 is the one where we really start getting the next 3D Mario, the next Zelda, the Splatoon 3. Of course, 2 of those are more confirmed than the other one. But it could lead for a second 2017 for the Switch, and something that could really propel it forward, especially if that's alongside a stronger hardware model, which people have said we're getting this year, but honestly, I kind of doubt it personally. But I don't know. I just wish things were spread out a little better, because while 2017 was a great start, if they had spaced these larger releases out a little bit more, it would have felt like more years are strong for the Switch.
Sure. And I mean, the last thing I'll say is, like we said, there's still time. There's still a lot of time to announce stuff. There's time to fill out the back half of the year. I think that's going to start as soon as next week, and then we'll see from there. But as both a niche Nintendo fan and as the average one exclusive a month enjoyer, I'm glad that we actually have content releasing consistently throughout the beginning of this year, if nothing else. But Tucker, I think we've hooted and hollered enough about Nintendo's 2021 current lineup. We'll of course be back to re-examine when Nintendo announces more stuff, and hopefully talk about Pokemon soon. In the meantime, like, subscribe, Discord, we talked about it, you know what to do. I'm not gonna hold your hand anymore, you're not a baby. Unless you want, then you shouldn't be on YouTube. This video's marked as not for kids.
Yeah, we curse sometimes. Bye. Do it, motherfucker. Do it. Do it. Say it. I see it in your eyes. I see it in your soul.
Bye. And then we go, okay, you know, I see your perspective. It's very interesting. I like your mustache. Let's talk about the individual games. And then we'll be like, how about we talk about fucking Mario Golf? And then we'll talk about Skyward Sword. And then I'll talk briefly about these games that you don't care about and 97.6% of Nintendo fans don't care about. And then we'll wrap the discussion.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.